Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to have another outstanding show. We have an author, but not just any type of author. Author that deals with evaluation of one of the most deadly sin I can probably think of, for the love of money. Let me tell you where we're going with this. For the love of money, people will steal from their mother. For the love of money, people will rob their own brother. For the love of money, a woman will sell her precious body. The list goes on. This young lady has been through some type of trauma, some type of adversities in her life. Don't be fooled by the beauty. She's been through some stuff. But what I like about her is her authenticity, her ability to overcome, her ability to take her trials and tribulations and turn them into positive influence to help other individuals. I'd like to welcome to the show the one, the only, the 5-time bestseller. I already put it out there, Nicole Middendorf. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Let's get right down to it before we get into all 5 of these award-winning books, strategies, and more importantly, your bucket list. Tell the viewers about Nicole real quick.
Grew up as an only kid, a figure skater. I was the first generation to go to college. And so it was a big deal I'm not from money at all. And so it was a huge, big deal for my parents. And I really, really wanted, because I was a figure skater, I really, really wanted to go to college in Colorado. But my dad set me down one night with a map of Minnesota with a protractor and said, I want you to circle a 100-mile radius around Minneapolis. And he goes, if you go to college within that 100-mile radius, we will pay for you to go to college and we will help you out. If you go outside that 100-mile radius, good luck, kiddo. So I ended up going to a state college, a state university, St. Cloud State. And that I went to school for international business and marketing. I had started working when I was 11 and saved up money and went and studied abroad over in Germany. And just when I was over there, I fell in love with the United Nations. And figure skating taught me how to be driven, taught me how to set goals, really taught me the power of your mind. And if you believe something, you can achieve it. And I became this super overachiever and I wanted to go to law school. But I always believe like things happen for a reason and you meet people for a reason. And my path was not headed to go to law school or not meant to go that way. I met a gentleman in college and everything was super fast. We were dating, then we were engaged, boom, then we were married. And he refused for me to go to law school. And he started as a stockbroker. He had dreamt of being a stockbroker his whole life. And so when I was ready and wanting to go to law school, he's like, no, you're going to work with me. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, money's not my thing. Because back in 6th grade, I was always in like all the honors classes. I think they were back then, they were called challenge classes. I think they call them honors classes today. Right. But in math class in 6th grade, our teacher for challenge classes was gone. So I was with everyone else. And I was called up to the front of the room to do this problem. And I wrote it out on the chalkboard and I sat down. And as I looked back at it, I was like, I think I did that wrong. And I went to say something, but I didn't. And the teacher made this huge, big deal out of, how can we have this challenge student, this honors student, do this math problem incorrect? And it was at that moment, from there forward, I was never in honors math. I put this mental block on myself. I can't do math, which means I can't do money. And so I had this huge fear when my now ex-husband was telling me, you're going to be a financial advisor. I'm like, I can't. I had this huge fear. But fast forward, I became an advisor. I left Morgan Stanley in 2003 to start a business. I started a company called Strategic Financial. I was working with my now ex-husband. He was the branch manager. And then fast forward a few years later, I had kids, and my daughter was 6 months old and my son was 2. And it was the first time that the 911 phone call went through. And I had to come to the acknowledgement with myself that I was a victim of domestic violence. And I had to figure out a way of like, how do I get out of this? And so I sat down and rewrote my bucket list. And that was a way for me to give myself a distractor. The average divorce case in Minnesota takes a year. Little did I not know that mine would take 10 years, let alone still deal with court issues to this day. And I had to give the company name, the website. We had 12 financial advisors. And in 2012, I started all over again. And so when you look up the word resilient in the dictionary, my name is just written right by there.
Let's just go back a little bit. Thanks for sharing a little glimpse of your life. Let's go back a minute. Let's focus on some key words here. Let's start with the family. You said you use the topic money. Mm-hmm. What was money like in your household?
I had no control over it. And that's the irony of it, like being a wealth advisor and seeing accounts and having access to things. But like I would save money and put money away into an account. And my ex-husband would come into the office and like just blurt out and tell me, hey, I used the money in that account for X, Y, and Z. And for something that I never agreed upon. And that's where I feel like the things that happen to you in life, like the mistakes that you make or the experiences that you have, that makes you who you are. And for me, so many people are like, oh my gosh, like what you went through was so awful, but it's made me a better person. It's made me a better mom. It's made me a better wealth advisor. And I will always understand those feelings of intimidation, lack of control. And those are a lot of feelings that people have when it comes to money. And so even though I was a financial advisor, married to a financial advisor, we didn't talk about money. Everything was always my fault. We never had enough. And anything that I ever tried to save and put away, it was always gone. And I was, my parents had this life insurance policy for me that they had taken out when I was born. Well, he had me cash it in. And so I had this money sitting in an account. That legally is my own money. It's right. Premarital money. It's mine. Well, so we were at this charity event because, mind you, when we were together, I did a radio show for here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. I did a radio show every Saturday called More Than Money with Nicole. People would call in. I'm generally on TV once a week. And so I was the MC at this charity event. And they ended up then to this live auction part. And there was this painting of a lion. And the painting was called The King. And my ex-husband, or my husband at the time, made me call him the King. And so he nudged me and he's like, you need to buy me that. I'm like, we don't have any money.
Right.
So the insurance money, the life insurance policy money that he had me cash in, that bought this King painting. And so literally when he was gone and he was arrested and out of the house, I couldn't get rid of that painting fast enough because money was held over me as like an object or as control or as like, and I never felt like it was a positive thing. I always felt like it was a bad thing.
When did you start realizing that there was a shift in the relationship and the shift literally came in the form of money, control, and power?
I mean, I knew before I married him that I shouldn't be marrying him. Walking down the aisle, I was like, I knew I was making a mistake, but I was young. I was a rule follower. It just, I don't know if you've heard this analogy before, but you take a pot of water and you have a frog inside of it and you gradually turn the temperature up versus you take a boiling pot of water and throw a frog in it. The frog's going to freak out. Well, when you're in something and every day, like things gradually get worse and worse, you're not really aware. But when I would go to the doctor and every time I go to the doctor and they say, do you feel safe in a relationship? My response is always, thank you for asking that. because so many times that was just one moment for me to pause and be like, I really don't feel safe.
Why didn't you feel safe? I'm curious. Why didn't you feel safe?
So I started after the emotional abuse was the worst, because physical abuse, like I would get punched like in the shoulder and my back. And so no one ever like physically saw anything. You know, you get shoved into a door, you'd punch a hole in the wall, or like shoved into a laundry basket. I know women that were thrown out of windows and ended up in the hospital. Like, how I rationalize it, well, I'm not in the hospital. Like, I'm okay. I'm still walking. I kept, rationalizing things. But to me, the emotional abuse, that's the worst piece, because that sticks with you for so long. I mean, I continue to do deep PTSD therapy to really, and that's the whole reason I came up with the Live It list. I rewrote my bucket list. I'm like, I just need something that's positive. Well, the Live It list was completely transformational for me to really make a difference in how I thought about myself, how I thought about and had some confidence in life, and really felt empowered and somewhat in control.
But Nicole, people will listen to your story, and let me put this out there right now. Nobody here needs to judge who you are, your decisions that you made, and and nobody needs to judge your story. This is your story. Mm-hmm. However, you're still dealing with human curiosity. What were the flags prior to you walking down? You're in the hot water, but it's not boiling all the way. You had to see something in this guy before you even decided to go down there, because you just said it. What were some of the signs that he was showing? And then I would ask myself, because it wasn't me that married him, what the hell did he bring to the table that made you say, okay, I do?
I was raised private Catholic. And once we were engaged, when you have someone that's manipulative, narcissistic, sociopathic tendencies, that person doesn't ever think about someone else. They only think about themselves. And so it was this dynamic of control. So he knew I was raised very strict private Catholic. He knew that once I slept with, like, you are supposed to be with one person in your life. And so everything was super fast. Dating was fast. Engagement was fast. And he's like, now we're engaged. We're basically married. You need to sleep with me. And he just kept asking and asking and asking and asking and asking. And when someone, like, they just wear you, like, you just wore down. And so I had slept with him. That's the reason I walked down the aisle, was my Catholic faith and how I was
consummated raised. You, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have kids prior to that, before you got married?
No.
So you go into the relationship, you walk down honeymoon bliss. When did it really start to surface? Did it surface after you had your kids, before you had your kids? Just curious.
I mean, I knew walking down the aisle, like even the wedding, like he showed up late to the ceremony. Like, looking back now, like but I was also very young. Like, when, I had.
Didn't your mom or dad say, "Are you crazy?"
No. And
your friends didn't ask you, "Are you crazy?"
Did. Mm-hmm. Oh yes. My friend. And that's the thing, like my best girlfriend from college, I really learned now, like that's where I have now that my kids are teenagers, I have deep conversations with them about relationships and how do you treat other people. And my best girlfriend from college was my maid of honor. Mm-hmm. And before we got married, my ex-husband got into a fight with her, uninvited her from the wedding, and she couldn't be my maid of honor. And so
Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You allow a man you're not even married to yet, mm-hmm, to tell you,
yes,
that you can't have your best friend, mm-hmm, be your maiden of honor.
Yes. Do you see why I'm now single? Do you see why now I will be single for a while?
So what did that had to cause rift between you and your girlfriend?
Yeah. And we were friends, but it destroyed, there's things in life that I regret. And like, I will never let a man or someone else like ruin a long friendship. And I regret that. And I mean, I can apologize till I'm blue in the face, but, and I just can't go back in time and change that decision. She was in the wedding, like, you know, we repaired the relationship, but, you know, and she has been one of the biggest supporters when the relationship with, you know, when I finally was able to get out and start the divorce proceedings, you know, she was there and super supportive of it. And I, you know, I felt awful, obviously.
You said something profound. I get an idea of what you went through the conversation that we're having now. Eventually, this turned into a 911.
Mm-hmm.
What was that moment for you? And what was it like to get out of that 911? Because here's a guy that's controlling, manipulative, puts a distance between you and your friends. So I would take it, tell me if I'm right or wrong, your inner circle couldn't be that big with a person like that in your life. No. So there was probably nobody to turn to or to hear Nicole's call for help.
Right.
So you do the 911, you call 911. Take me down there.
Yep. So it was the first time that the 911 phone call went through. There was numerous other times that things were getting very physical, that he would grab the 911 phone call from me and hang up and not let it go through. But it was ironically, actually, it was his birthday. It was August 4th of 2010. My son was 2. And we had a swimming pool right outside that house, right where we were. I was feeding my daughter. She's in a little bumbo and I'm feeding her. And my son, my now ex-husband, grabs my son up out of the high chair because he was sitting in there, you know, eating, grabs him up and you know how you've seen like 2020 or those shows where like a kid's neck is going back and forth and they're talking about, you know, like the mystery shows of like what happened. Like his neck is flying back and forth and my ex is just shaking him and swearing at him and threatening to throw him in the pool. My son was 2. Like all my thought is, oh my God, like he's going to throw our son in the pool and he is going to drown because here I have this 6-month-old and how am I going to protect our kids? Mm-hmm. And so I ran across, we still had home phones back then. And so I grabbed her, ran across the room and dialed 911. And looking back, like, you know, my mom raised me to be very independent. And this is so much so to a detriment where it's like, I can do this on my own. Like, don't ever expect anyone to help you. And so the 911 operator, you know, is asking what's happened. She's like, the police are on their way. And she's like, do you want me to stay on the line or are you okay? I'm like, I'm okay. And I hang up. Like looking back, like that was the dumbest thing. Yeah. Because in the meantime, my son's like, you know, pounding on his dad, trying to get free. He gets free. So I have my 6-month-old in one arm, my 2-year-old in the other. I hang up with 911 and he's in the kitchen going over and grabbing a knife. And I just bolt down the hallway with both kids. And I put my arm out and I eventually, because he's running after me, and I put my arm out and I'm just like, stop. Is this what happened to you with your father? And it's like all of a sudden, like his face was like bright red. And all of a sudden his face went white and he ran and they put a warrant out for his arrest. And I had already had a bag packed, you know, I had written a safety plan, you know, I had all the steps and done all the things that you're supposed to do. And I called my parents and, you know, my parents were always waiting for that phone call. And so
really? So your parents kind of like knew what was going on without you even telling them?
Yeah. My parents knew, my close friends knew because we worked together. And so like he had complete access to my calendar. And so he would see that I'd be doing lunch with my best guy friend from college. And let's say the lunch is at noon. Well, at 10:30, he'd come into my office. He's like, get in the car. We got to go to such and such. It's an emergency meeting. And so then I would not be able to have lunch. He totally had so much access to completely control where I was, who I was with, and who I was talking to. And, you know, he'd listen to my phone calls. Like he would read my journals. And so eventually I started putting just little check marks on my journal in the upper right-hand corner of how many times he told me to kill myself, drive your car into the lake. And when he did that, when I was pregnant with my daughter, that's where I was like, I've got to get out. Like, what man tells his wife to drive herself into the lake while she's pregnant with your child? And so, but like, you're not thinking clearly. It's, you're walking on eggshells and so I just started keeping track of how many times he would tell me to take a gun and kill myself or drive myself into the lake or,
What do you think you were looking for, Nicole? What do you think you was looking for? And what do you think, what were you looking for that made you really stay there? Because you went to school for managing money and finances. You could have left. What was the reason for really staying there? If this guy's showing you who he is and you got children.
In the beginning, it was my religion and how I was raised. And then it was when I was like once I kind of got over that of like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is my own physical safety. And then it was, I can make this work. Like, I'm a fixer. I'm a problem solver. That's just like who I am.
Right.
But then once the kids were born and I started, they were getting hurt physically, emotionally, that's where I was like, I've got to get out. But someone entraps you so much. Like, they put trackers on your cars. You have no one to talk to without them there. Like, every doctor's appointment then when I was pregnant, like, he was always there. Like, I was never able to be in a room by myself to get advice. I wasn't able to see a therapist. I wasn't able to have conversations with my friends. And you're so much in this world of entrapment, and then there's a cycle of abuse. Like, things get really bad and horrible things would happen. And then, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they're, buying you roses and apology letters, and this will never happen again. And in 2005, I had overheard a fight with my father. He had told my dad, he's like, get off our property. You will never see your daughter alive again. Wow. And so that's where I was like, this is it. Like, this guy is going to kill me. And so I served him with divorce papers, and he's like, I'll go to therapy with you. So we went to marriage counseling, and wait
a minute. This sounds crazy. I know we're going to go over 30 minutes. This is crazy.
It's a Lifetime movie.
Yeah. So you stayed in the relationship. You went to therapy with a dude that told your father, next time you see your kid, she'll be dead. Yep. Pretty much questionable about having your kids in his shaking thing, coming at you with a knife. Did you get therapy? Were you going to therapy?
I did after all of this. I've been through a lot. Yes.
What in the hell made you even think that he was going to change with you going to counseling? Who put the counselor out? He did or you did?
Well, here's the interesting thing. So the therapist is like, Nicole, here's the issue. You're working too much. You need to spend more time with him. You two need to do something together. And so and the therapist was like, have him pick what you guys are going to do. So my now ex-husband, so he signed us up for conceal and carry classes. That was what I was supposed to work less, and we were supposed to do the conceal and carry classes together. Awful therapist advice. Like, just looking back, it's like I made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, but I can't live in that. I live in the fact of it is what it is. And now it's made me who I am, and it's made me a stronger person. And it's made me have this story and this ability to be very vulnerable and open and be authentic and share that with other people to help other people, so that other people aren't stuck in that situation for as long as I was stuck in, that less children are affected negatively, that I can make an impact and make a difference in someone else's life. Speaking of
the impact, I know we only got 30 minutes, but we're definitely going to do another part to this. But out of the flames, through the rain that puts out the flames, comes a rainbow. You started a series of books. I call it your bucket list. Let's call it what it is. Let's go through each one of those books really quick and explain your transformation out of the pain and the suffering and how you created a rainbow. Because the number one thing that I'm starting to get from this is most women stay in those situations to feel validated, and they're afraid to leave mostly because of money.
Mm-hmm.
Were those two of your reasons?
I felt trapped. I felt like I had no access to money, even though I was an advisor. He totally controlled everything. And I also felt completely scared from him. Like I knew physically he could kill me. And I mean, it took many, many years before I could get a good night's sleep. It's only been about 3 years, really.
Now you deal with a lot of women, and you shared a lot of the women do have a hard time with the finances part. You wrote books. Let's go down that first book and tell the viewers what that book is, what inspired that book. We're going to go through all 5 of them before we release the new book that's coming out.
Okay. So Simple Answers. Life is More Than Just About Money was the first one. And this was where I write in here like, oh, I thought I married Prince Charming. And
that didn't happen.
No, far from it. It's all about women trying to make money very simple for women and sharing a bit of my story and making it feel empowering for women.
Mm-hmm. Well, out of that first book, what was a key moment in that book that you can remember to this day from that first book? You're just now restructuring your life. You're, I guess, doing okay financially, but now you got to tell your story. What part of that first book can you really resonate with?
I mean, for me, it was, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Susie Orman. And when I had met her, I was like, I'm writing my first book. And she's like, oh, I wrote my first book to impress my clients. And for me, that's not why I wrote books. That's not why I write them at all. I write them to help people. And that's why I've got 26,000 plus people that follow me on LinkedIn. Like I write to inspire. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the first book was like, oh, wow, like I did this. Mm-hmm. And after it, people are like, well, when's your next book coming out? It was kind of that confirmation for me of like, okay, like I'm on to something. I'm writing, I'm doing something that I love. And I'm having that validation from someone else and from other people telling me like, hey, you've got a story to tell and it's okay to tell that story. And we want to hear that story.
What's the one part of that particular book before we go into the second book? What's the one part of that book or that you think inspires a lot of individuals to say, you know what, I want more? Come out with the second book.
It's the fact that like, I'm not from money. And like your typical financial advisor is this 59-year-old male and is very analytical. And that's not me. I'm not from money. I'm very left brain. I'm very right brain. And I'm coming from it from a different standpoint. And that history of domestic violence and control will always sit with me. And that's very comforting and helpful for people.
What's that second book?
So this is the $1 million question. And so this is kind of your Investing for Dummies book. So it's all question and answer format. So it's like, what's a Roth IRA? Do I need a will or a trust? What's a 401k plan? How much credit card debt should I have? If I buy a house, how much should I put down? This came from all the years of doing a radio show with people asking me all these questions, coming up with a resource that can help them.
When you got done with the first book and you got ready to do the second book, how much of the first book amplified you going into the second book prior to even doing the radio show? Like, were people already filling your head with questions, and were a lot of these questions and answers coming from women from that have been domestically abused or women who have left a relationship without money? What were the people that were coming to you, giving you information to write the not only the first book, but the second book?
Yeah. I mean, it's your average person in the Midwest. We have the people that would call into the radio show with, I always remember one caller. He's like, I love McDonald's hotcakes and I want to have them every day. How can I afford that? It's your average Minnesotan, average Wisconsin, average person from the Midwest asking questions. So men, women, business owners, younger college students, older generations, older people. It's a very good place for people to start of, okay, I need to learn about money, and I need it to be very simple so that I can understand it.
How much of your relationship, your family tree, your marriage went into the first two books? How much of yourself did you see in those?
Not much. And really it came from after I wrote these first two, I then was invited to be on a panel that kind of coincided with this third one. And it was a panel. I was up on stage with a group of women business owners. And I opened up a little bit of my story. I didn't come out and say, like, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I definitely did not share as much as I've shared today. But I got off the stage and the line was just out the door of women wanting to ask me questions and saying, like, thank you for sharing your story. I'm in this similar situation, or I got out, or I want to get out. To the point that the woman that was running the conference is like, Nicole, we need you out in the hallway because you're disrupting it for the next speaker. And it was at that moment where I was like, I need to share. Like, I need to share more of my story because I need to be vulnerable, and it's okay to be vulnerable.
What's the third book?
So that's what led to this. A publisher reached out to me, and it's all about breaking the glass ceiling. So it's women business owners, and it's sharing more. This is what really prompted that. It was me sharing more of my story of being in a male dominated industry and how do you succeed, and how can we as women be empowered and be successful and feel confident, even though we may not, and exude that confidence, even though we may not feel totally 100% confident inside ourselves.
What do women want? Do they want chivalry, or they want to be masculine?
I think in my own search, I want that nice balance. Yes, I'm in a very male dominated industry, and so I need to own those masculinity qualities. But yet this is what makes me great, is owning that feminine side and being super creative, launching the liveitlist.com, launching a Live It List journal, coming out with various different tools that are there to help people. And so I feel like there's this huge conversation out there of like having that fine balance. I feel like so many women went so much to a trend of that masculinity, and now it's coming back, and it's like finding that nice balance.
I'm going to ask you another question before we talk about that particular book. You talked a lot about women. What about a reverse situation where the man can be the victim of the domestic situation and not, or the woman controls the finances and so forth? Do you get any of those individuals as clients or people that communicate with you and say, look, the roles are reversed. This is happening to me now. And if so, what do you tell that male how to recover?
One in 3 women are in a domestic violence situation. 1 in 9 men are in a domestic violence situation. And so I know we've been talking a lot about women, but it's not just women. I have a male client right now. He's been a stay-at-home dad. And so she controls everything. And she is not so much physically, I don't want to say crazy, but physically abusive, but she's very financially abusive and very emotionally abusive. And so it's all about empowering him and helping him figuring out, how do I get out of this? How can I financially be okay? How can I get the kids okay? And how can I make sure that all of them are okay?
Let's talk about that particular book right there, The Work List.
This is So this is the Live It list. So earlier this year, we launched the liveitlist.com. And this is basically the positive spin on the bucket list. So in here, this is where there's questions like, what does happiness mean to you? It's more of a journal and a tool for you to help figure out what's your why? Like, why do you get up in the morning? What does money mean to you? What's important? What are all the things that you want to accomplish? We just had a client come into the office this morning that was diagnosed with cancer, told he has 6 months left to live. So it's like, if you're given that news today, what have you not done? Like, don't wait for someone to tell you you've got 6 months or a year or 3 years left to live. Like, what can you be doing today so that you're living life to the fullest? And that's what this is, a journal, a book to help you do.
Let me flip that question to you. What's your why?
My why is really my story of never planning on being an advisor, really wanting to change the world like Madeleine Albright or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so that's my why, is one, to change the world of how people view money. Social media makes life look perfect. And people have this idea like, oh, when I have more money, then I'll be happy. Or when I get this, then I'll be happy. And it's all of this stuff, but that's not what makes us happy. And so for me, I want to change that statistic that 1 in 3 Americans is happy. I mean, there's no reason why every American shouldn't be. And so it's really inspiring, sharing people, telling people my story and bringing the Live It list internationally to really change that. Also, at the same standpoint, it's changing the financial services industry, getting more women in financial services, because we make phenomenal financial advisors, because we're great at listening, we're great at communicating, and really transforming how people think about money, but how women are treated in the financial services industry, let alone overall, equality.
What are you doing now before we wrap up? You have a new book coming out, new projects. Take the viewers down that real quick.
Yeah. So this was the 5th book. This is Who Pays: Navigating Love and Money. We also came out with these love and money cards. And so it's a whole deck of cards to help people with their relationship with money. And the 6th book that I'm working on right now is all about the Live It list, and all about sharing more of my story and how the Live It list transformed my life and helped me wake up in the morning and be happy, and how it can help other people.
Nicole, what would you like to see change in the world right now? Based on you, and thanks for coming on, sharing your story, being very transparent with it, and your struggles with money, and how important is it for people to understand that money should not determine who they are? Because I think you capped on that every time you turn on social media, it's about how to get money here, how to do this. And there's never anything about just self. How can I be happy with just who I am? And we know from history, King Tut didn't take shit with him.
Right.
None of these kings and pharaohs took none of the gold with them.
Right.
What's your take on this and life in general right now, based on everything you went through and you're helping other individuals?
I mean, for me, like so I lived in the big house. We had boats, we had 4-wheelers, we had multiple cars, we had all this stuff. So from the outside, my life looked perfect, right, on TV, doing radio shows, but none of it I had picked out. I hated the house that we lived in. I didn't pick out my career. I never wanted to be a financial advisor. None of it was me, and none of it I had picked out. And so for me, all of that stuff meant nothing. And I was completely just empty inside. And so that's where I needed to spend some time. And that's really where the 5th book came from, is I need to spend some time in figuring out, who was I? What do I want? And what am I going to do? And how am I going to get there? I had to pay a significant amount of spousal maintenance. I received no child support. I had to start my business all over again. And so it was a humongous struggle. And it was interesting because I spoke the other day at a university, and this was the first time ever. I mean, I do lots of public speaking and I love that. It was the first time ever someone ever asked me, well, how come you didn't go to law school? Like, when this was all over and your divorce was done, how come you didn't go to law school? I'm like, well, frankly, my divorce cost me so much money and I had to pay so much spousal maintenance that thought never even crossed my mind.
Mhm.
And there's so much, you say, what do I want? There's so much injustice. I mean, particularly here, I live in Minneapolis, and there's been so many things that have been happening that are just wrong. And the thought keeps coming across my mind now of like, okay, I didn't get to law school, but how can I change our system? How can I help make things better for the next generations? Because the mistakes that I made going through my divorce, and this is part of the reason I have my own foundation, the mistakes that I made going through my divorce, like, affect my kids still every single day. And like, I really want to impact and change society so that that doesn't happen for other children. And it's all encompassing in mental health. I mean, if we're not happy and we're empty inside, we're not mentally healthy. And so you can have all the money in the world. It doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. It can't bring you your health. It can't bring you physical health, mental health, anything. And so that's all about helping really, I want to transform and make a huge difference. And be that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, be that Oprah, be that Beyonce, be that Madeleine Albright in the world surrounding happiness and helping people find their true self.
How can the viewers reach out to you for public speaking? How can they get your book? How can they contact you, period?
Yep. You can go to NicoleMiddendorf.com. And otherwise, you can go to thelivitlist.com. My company's prosperwell.com. Otherwise, I'm on all the social components. LinkedIn is where I write inspirational stuff every single day.
Once again, I'd like to really thank you for coming on the show and sharing your beautiful story of overcoming and playing it forward and making a difference in everybody's life based on what you went through. Leave the viewers with something positive before we wrap up. And you're definitely a beast. I like that beast frame of mind. I like where you're going. Leave the viewers with something positive, Nicole.
Give yourself grace. My mentor, who passed away a handful of years ago, there isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about him or talk about him. And one of the things that he would tell me every single day was give yourself grace. So no matter the situation that you're in or what you're struggling with, give yourself grace.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another beautiful, exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.